Well, those are the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour and all evening today on ET Now. Let's take a look, meantime, at what exactly is on the table for discussion today. Well, like I said, a lot of you may have received your salaries for the month of March. It may be accompanied by yearly bonuses for, well, some people. For the others, they are, of course, still in the midst of a COVID-ravaged economy, so it may take a little while. But nevertheless, for all of you, how should you ensure that you are investing this money in the proper fashion? How should you utilize this money in the right manner so that you don't have the end-of-month syndrome that usually does affect many people, especially salaried individuals, as they peek into their wallet on the 30th or the 31st of every month. So, for this discussion, I have with me Mr. Anil Rego of Right Horizons. Mr. Rego, thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now. So to start with, sir, as we enter a new financial year as well, Mr. Rego, how do you recommend individuals really kickstart this new financial year on the right tone for their money? All of us have got our salaries, some may have got bonuses, increments. So what do you think is the first thing such individuals should do?
I think the first thing that an individual should do is to actually plan for your monthly income right through the year. So this is a period when you may have seen some ups and downs in the past year. So it has been a bit of a wake-up call for all of us. So this is the time to actually start planning. Look at also setting up a monthly budget for yourself, saying that how much is it that one needs to spend, one can spend, plan for some of those, expenses that are not envisaged by you. So that is something that one does. Look back at the last year and see, is there something excessive you've done which you can correct? So the first part in all of it is just the planning side. The other aspect is to, look at your taxation, because this is the beginning of the year. Again, you may, see how have you done in the last year on your taxes, and you can start early, including through systematic investments into your tax saving plans, so that at the end of the year you actually don't have to do much, okay, and taxation doesn't become too much of an issue. The third aspect is to look at all the investment avenues. Again, at the beginning of the year, relook at the funds that you have. How much of SIPs do you have on a monthly basis, and would you like to increase it, especially if you are lucky to get a salary hike? Then that is something that you could do. Now the other part is, if you have got a lump sum or you're going to get bonuses, okay, plan for it. Don't spend it all away. Keep some money for a rainy day and invest it. Again, you can start a systematic transfer or a systematic investment. So that is something that you can do, and then subsequently you can start actually going back into your company and given the proof, your declarations, start your SIPs, get into action, and on your investments. And the last is probably keep some portion as liquidity, because like last year taught us, okay, there could be some surprises that come up, and have some money planned aside, so that in case the situation goes adverse, you don't have to take a loan, but you already have money, your own savings, which are liquid and which you can use.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that was the key takeaway from the crisis, that 2020 threw us in, and that is keeping an emergency fund for yourself, in case of a rainy day, like we saw in 2020. Many people lost their jobs, many saw pay cuts, etc. So I think that liquid fund, that little emergency cash, is an extremely important component of financial planning. So, Mr. Rego, this income that we have, how should one split it between the different expenses, savings, as well as, like you mentioned, the emergency fund?
Yeah, so see, typically there are two types of expenses. One is essential expenses, or what is also we call it necessities, and the second is lifestyle expenses. So essential expenses are those which are for day-to-day living, which are essential. Okay, they could include food, EMI payments, medical bills, utility bills. So all of them that, sort of keep coming up. So that is one thing that, we need to do, is to plan for some of these essential expenses, and these are more predictable for us. And since they are more predictable for us, okay, that is something that you plan as a base. The second is about lifestyle expenses, and how do you, plan for them, because some of them may not, come every month. There may be something, which suddenly comes up. You may also just decide to treat yourself, okay, and go for shopping. So one is to, keep a little tab on that and say, okay, this is how much I will sort of try and restrict myself to for the lifestyle expenses. And one easy thing that people do there is to say that, okay, you know what, let me decide on how much I want to save on a monthly basis. So if I decide that I want to save, say, 20% of my income on a monthly basis, put it off into SIPs and other monthly investments, and those can just go off, so that at the end of the month, you're left with, after the essential expenses, how much you can spend for your lifestyle expenses. So this is maybe a small, tip that you could follow.
Okay, fine. Mr. Rego, let's talk now about essential expenses. Many a times individuals do tend to not be able to draw the line between what would be considered as essential and, what essentially could be discretionary, avoidable. So if you could just help our viewers start off on that, because I think it's important that they also draw up a budget on, what their expenses are like. We're in a new financial year, so it's a great time to even, give your entire finances a relook. So where do you recommend they start off on the budgeting and the expenses front?
Yeah, so, it's good to have certain thumb rules for yourself, so that, you can end up, following it. It's easy to do, and, right through the year, it's not very complex for yourself. So one such rule is a 50-20-30 rule, okay, is in terms of a budgeting method, okay, and what it says is segregate the money that you save into three parts, okay. The first one is actually your needs, the second one is your wants, and the third is your savings, okay. So all of these are sort of important for you to plan for, and the highest priority goes for, your needs or some of your essential expenses that I listed a little earlier. And 50% of it can be, towards that. Now, if it goes up a little higher than that, then you have to be a little careful, because then it may eat into the rest. And that may happen, especially, if you have, let's say, a home loan, and you need to pay, a reasonably large home loan. So then you would find that even that 50 sort of goes up a little bit. The second aspect is on your wants. 20% is what you set aside for yourself, so that you are also enjoying life and, taking advantage of, lifestyles, shopping and, all the gifting and holidaying, all of it, is what you can sort of plan towards. The third, of course, is an essential one, which you take care of your future, which is the 30%, which is towards, taking care of your monthly investments. And that 30% can be, based on your own risk profile, some in equity, some in debt. Like I said, keep some liquid as well. So this, I think, is a simple way to take care of it. And it's possible that you may even be able to exceed your 30%, in terms of savings and investments. And when do you do that? When does that happen? It happens when probably it's a double income household and your spouse is also working, and, you can then, take advantage of it. But broadly, I think if you use a thumb rule like a 50-20-30 rule, which basically says 50% for needs, 20% for wants, and 30% for savings, I think you'll be in a very good place.
Okay. All right. So that's, I think, a good thumb rule as well for a lot of individuals to start off on, especially if they're a bit perplexed on how to go about it. And I think that's essentially something that everyone should do if they are not sure yet on how they should go about their financial planning. But this ratio is something that I think everyone can apply. So you can start off by doing that. Mr. Rego, one more question then before we move on to, our viewers' questions and queries as well. And, on that note, let me remind our viewers that you can email us on the Money Show at etnow.tv. There was a lot that happened yesterday around the movement in small saving rates. Mercifully, those have been now not slashed. So PPF still gets you a 7.1%, which is one of the most popular saving schemes. What are the other popular small saving schemes that are out there for our viewers to invest in? And, how would you compare them with inflation?
Yeah, so today I think the most popular scheme is definitely the PPF, and rightly so, because PPF also, helps you get tax-free income. So 7.1 tax-free, is almost like, for a person in 30% bracket, it's a little in excess of 10%, which means that when a bank FD gives you a 10% and that is taxable, if you're in the 30% bracket, then you keep that 7%. So that's as good as it gets. So I think that definitely should be, your first preference. There are other ones for senior citizens and the post office monthly income. And, you also have Sukanya Samriddhi and for the girl child. So those are some of the things that you could end up using, but I think PPF still continues to be the favorite, and one could still do that. Yes, the government did drop it. Interestingly, why did it fall? It fell because the government had set a rule for itself saying that we will sort of peg the small savings interest rates to, the Government of India bonds. And the yields on the Government of India bonds had fallen very sharply in this last half year, and the reset time came, and so it was, I think, automatically that it was sort of triggered. Now, of course, thanks to election year or not election year, election months for certain states, and that I guess was the populist measure that the government pulled back. Now you need to keep in mind that this may be a temporary one, and interest rates are sort of heading lower. Actually, the Government of India bonds are sort of lower than the PPF rate, etc. So they need to sort of come down. So you need to plan for yourself, assuming that interest rates will be lower. So take advantage of it. Do a combination of debt, equity. While the going is good, definitely use the PPF. If you are employed, then the Employee Provident Fund is another good thing which has a good interest rate right now. So take advantage of whatever is available, because we think that over a longer term, you'll find that interest rates come down as India develops more and more.
Okay, yes, these are one of the most popular savings instruments out there, and rightly so. PPF, Kisan Vikas, etc. Also do have the government's backing because they are. Your capital is absolutely safe, and let's not forget the interest rates as well are much better. Today inflation is somewhere around 5 to 6 odd %. All of these beat that, so it's a great instrument, and thankfully yes, any sort of announcement with respect to a cut in interest rates has been rolled back. Okay, well, I think it's time to take on board our questions and queries. Let me remind our viewers that you can email us on the Money Show at etnow.tv, and we'll get your questions answered. So G. Hari Krishna writes in saying that I had opened a 3-in-1 account for equity and mutual fund investments in my daughter's name in a brokerage firm. I've been investing an average of 5,000 rupees in MF and equities via IPO and secondary market. I started the account when she was 18 years old. She's 23. She's gone to UK in Jan for higher studies. Plus, she may have to stay back for another 2 years on work permit. So she's essentially going to be in UK for the next 4 odd years. Now he's asking, can I continue to invest in equity and mutual funds, or should I stop? What will be the tax liability if I continue to invest? Because do remember, the investments are in the name of his daughter, who is currently 23. He says I usually transfer the money to her from my account every month. She also has some funds in her name after the maturity of a PPF, which I was investing in since she was 3 years old. So that's great. She also has some of her own earnings. She earned roughly about 50,000 rupees, during FY21, and she has 2 lakhs in MFs, 1.75 lakhs in equities. So I think one great thing that Mr. Krishna has done is that he has, started a PPF afford one at an extremely early age, and I guess that's a great thing to do, a safe investment instrument as well for your children. But yeah, Mr. Rego, she's going to be abroad for, I guess, about 3.5 odd years. So what should such individuals do with their investments back home in India? What's the tax implication like? What are the rules like? Can the father continue making those investments in her name while she has an NRI status?
Yeah, so first of all, I think congratulations, Mr. Krishna, that you have been a very disciplined investor, and you've also been, inculcating value of savings for your daughter. So I think that's a fantastic thing that you are doing. Now, coming back to what is it that one can continue to invest? Should you do equity and mutual funds? I think keep in mind that mutual funds is easier for an NRI. Okay, so you don't have to worry too much in the short term, because she needs to gain NRI status for her tax filing, etc. And since she's just 2 months that she's left, that can continue for some time, up to 182 days. Okay, so you don't have to be worried too much about it. However, post that, you must keep in mind that if you want to continue to invest in equity, okay, then you basically need a PIS license from the RBI. Okay, now your banks, etc., would do it, and you may need to change the status of your account. Complex. So I would think that you could even let go of the equity and just put it in mutual funds, and stay put with that. Now coming back to how is it taxed? Okay, so there's no difference between a resident individual and a non-resident individual. Okay, so the taxation is exactly the same. So from that standpoint, there is no problem. However, for NRIs, if there is a tax, it is deducted at source, which means that the mutual fund or the bank, etc., would end up deducting tax at source on anything, even if it is not subject to TDS for a resident individual. So that is something that you keep in mind. So to summarize, mutual funds are the best place and simplest place to use. You can continue to use the whole range of mutual funds. Equities are a little more complex, so you need to maybe decide as to how you want to go about it, whether you want to simplify it, move it to mutual funds, and taxation, just keep in mind you have TDS that happens at source.
Okay. So there you have it. That's the recommendation. And yeah, I hope, everybody who has a young child with them right now, has started a PPF account in that child's name. And if you have a girl child, then a Sukanya Samriddhi account as well is a great way. I think it generates about 7.4 to 7.6% of interest, if I'm not mistaken, the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme. So if your daughter is under 10 years of age, then this is another great investment option. 7.4% is the 7.6%, pardon me, is the Sukanya Samriddhi scheme. Okay, let's take on board our next question. Santu Mondal writes in that I want to put 97,000 rupees in the Mirae Asset ELSS scheme for Section 80C purpose. I think he's a little bit late for that. But anyway, let's assume that he wants to do it for FY22. Now he's asking, should I make a lump sum or SIP if you want to invest in ELSS? So, yeah, when it comes to an ELSS, most people do it, to adhere to the Section 80C norms. So do you think that, what's the best way to put in money then in ELSS?
Yeah, definitely. I think ELSS is a good place to put in money, especially since it's a shorter term, as well as, it gives you exposure to equity. Keep in mind that, it's a high risk, high return investment. Okay, so ideally, one can take advantage of it. Now, Mubin actually, he has mentioned that between 1st April 21 to 22 is when, he wants to invest it. So he's actually early for the year. So it's very good that you're planning for the year right at the start. Okay, and I think what you can do, since you seem to have a lump sum, okay, so you can do what we call as a systematic transfer plan, which means you can go and put it off into invest the amount in lump sum into a liquid fund of Mirae Asset Global, and then do a systematic transfer which means you can define even a weekly or a monthly transfer between the liquid fund and the ELSS fund. Now, what that does for you is that in case markets are volatile, you will benefit from the averaging there. In case of a larger market fall, okay, then you can even choose to switch in the equity in phases or even in lump sum, because you are looking at buying at a lower cost. So if by chance there's a fall in the market during this period, you can do that. The systematic transfer you can do typically, I would suggest, for between 6 to 9 months, and the reason for that, normally all of us have to submit our proofs to our companies, and what that does is effectively any investments that happen in the last quarter become a little challenging for us to show it as proofs because you've not yet invested yet. So I would think that if you have a lump sum, systematic transfer can be done and you complete it before December, so that or whatever time that the proofs happen for your company on an average, so that you are able to do it well within.
All right. Okay, let's take on board one more question that we have received. Gopal Singh says, I'm currently investing in the following funds with a horizon of 14 years. He's investing in them for retirement, and Mr. Rego, he wants you to review his portfolio. So he's got 2,000 rupees in the Canada Robeco Emerging Blue Chip, 2,000 in Axis Focus 25,000 each in Axis Small Cap, Invesco Mid Cap, PGM Flexi Cap, and 2,000 in Nifty 50 Index Fund from UTI. So, Mr. Rego, what do you think of the 6 funds that he has chosen to invest in? Do you think the amount is good enough as well? Because he's got, roughly about 9,000 rupees of an SIP that he is doing, which I assume he will continue doing for the next 14 years. So, is this amount as well, according to you, going to be sufficient?
Yeah, so I think in terms of he's chosen the good fund, so I don't think there's too much, for me to recommend on that. But I would focus on, what he needs to look at what is the amount that is good for him. Okay, so to start off with, are you able to achieve your goals with these smaller contributions? Ideally, look at putting aside at least 20% to 30% of your monthly income, so that you are sort of taking care of it. The second part is he does have some bit of mid cap as well as small cap through Invesco, and also he has a flexi cap. Okay, the index fund is the other thing that he can choose to look at, and I think there, if at all he wants, he can even move it into a multi-cap fund, because our view is that mid and small cap should do better. Okay, of course, you also need to keep in mind that they could also correct sharper. So as and when markets do very well for you, for example, the Axis Small Cap and the Canada Robeco Emerging Equity, you can choose to book some profits at good time, during your investing timeline. So with the next 2 years, I think he could start looking to take some money away and maybe even introduce or switch it over to a dynamic asset allocation fund, which can sort of manage risk better.
Okay, so that's just a few chops and changes recommended by Mr. Rego. But I think with that, we are out of time. So that's all the questions we're going to be able to take. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, you can always stay connected with us by writing in on our email address. And Mr. Rego, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I hope you have a lovely and a pleasant long weekend. Take a very short break. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back to answer your questions and queries. Our email address is themoneyshow@etnow.tv. So stay connected with us. For now, quick break, but we'll be back with more.